am Halle Berry, and I am here with the incomparable, award-winning, Oscar-winning, Grammy-winning Miss Jennifer Hudson. And we're going to talk today about respect and her journey to bring the Queen of Soul to life. Jennifer Hudson, it is my extreme pleasure to talk to you today. I have loved you since American Idol, and I'm sure you hear this all the time. I'm not telling you anything new, but I remember sitting there on my couch, rooting for you, watching you shine, watching you sing, have the hair stand up on my arms when you belt it out, note after note after note. So I have been a huge fan.
Thank you so much.
Can I tell you how proud I am to be sitting here with you right now and having a conversation with you about what I think is a crowning achievement. You know, wow. You've done other great things. You already have an Academy Award, you know, for Dreamgirls, but this to me takes it all on another level for you. I don't know who else could play Aretha Franklin in the movie Respect and bring her life to the screen other than you. I mean, I really can't even think of anyone else. As I sat here for this interview, I thought, who else could have done this? And I really come up with nothing. So the first thing I want to ask you is, I know, and we all know that Aretha handpicked you, but like, really, how did that make you feel?
It was my dream to play her. One, it was exciting when she said, okay, I want Jennifer to play me, because I know she went through, we first met 15 years ago about this, but once it actually happened, then it's like, oh my God, where do you even start? Like, how do you capture or portray someone of this stature, of this magnitude, of this level? It changes things from being a musical fan and loving her musically to now, okay, play Miss Franklin. And it's like, where do you even start? So it made it the most exciting thing and the scariest thing too. And it is the most personal project to me, for many reasons. And then because obviously we all love her and I'm a musical fan as well, I understand exactly what she represents and what she is, to us.
Do you remember, and I like to know these kinds of things just because I'm nosy, but do you remember like how she asked you, like her words? Do you remember the moment when this conversation happened, or was it just time after time you saw her, it came up? Or was there a specific moment that she asked you?
She called me. I was actually on Broadway doing Color Purple, and it was a Monday, and I happened to be off that day. And she called and she said, now I've made my decision, and it is you who I want to play me, young lady. And I said, yes, ma'am. And she said, now don't you tell us so. And I said, no, ma'am, I won't. And that was the end of the conversation. And then the next day she went and told it to the press, but she didn't tell them my name. She said, now the young lady knows exactly who she is. And it wasn't until another 6 to 8 years after that, the film was created. Before that, leading up to it, like she would always want me to do the tributes to her. Like one time I sang for her for my 30th birthday, and I was performing here in Chicago, and someone came over to me at the event and was like, Miss Franklin wants you to do the tribute for her. And I was like, anytime she would call, I'm like, I'm there. And then they was like, it's September 12th. And I was like, that's my 30th birthday. And then I said, what better way to mark my 30th birthday than to say I sang for the Queen of Soul? So right. I would never forget what I got to do on my 30th birthday as well,
That is amazing. And you kept that secret a very, very, very long time.
Yeah.
And my question is, so if you knew that you had been handpicked and you were actually going to play her, is that when your research started? Is that when you started to, as an actor, start to dig into all the layers and start unpeeling, and unpacking what that would really mean?
You know what? That's a great question. Not as far as character-wise, but as far as like performing. Because even leading up to that, like anytime I would tribute her in my mind, I wanted her to see herself through me in the performance. So musically, and because she had layers to her, you know what I mean? So it's like from the performance perspective, yes. But it wasn't until when it actually started to happen, the development of like the character and doing the research and all of those things. But right. As far as performance and things like that and learning of the music, yes, in that way.
Did she ever in all of those times that you attributed her, did she come back to you and give you that thing that you were wanting? Did she say, oh my God, I saw myself, like you killed it, like that was, like, what did she give you?
The closest thing to it was when I did, I think it was the BET Honors, and it was supposed to have been a surprise performance. And she ended up sneaking backstage into my rehearsal and crashed the entire rehearsal. And she sat and she talking to me. That was when I really got to sit with the person, not the icon and the legend, but like Aretha, the human, you know? And then after that performance, she said, now I need to use that medley right there. I'm going to take that. And it's like, okay, that was like her giving her blessing, because she didn't give you much, you know? Even being called years and years to sing and do tributes, I'm like, does she like me? Did she hear me? Does she know? You know, you just never really, just never fully knew. So even while we were filming, I would always tell people, if I don't make you feel a little uncomfortable, then I'm not doing my job. Because she had this presence where you just kind of didn't know, like, what's she thinking? Where do you stand? How does she, you know what I mean?
Well, you brought that quality beautifully into the storytelling. Now, because I'm an actor, I want to get into what did the work look like for you? Because, you know, we all know you can sing and you have a voice, like you will be the voice of your generation for sure. So we know you have that big voice, but you know, this wasn't just you singing. I want to talk about your process of really embodying her, because I don't know if you're like me. When I think of a character, I got to think of all of the character, their walk, their talk, you know, how they move, the energy they bring to the room. So how did you tackle, you kind of went into it, like you said, if you weren't uncomfortable around Aretha, then, you know, something wasn't right. So you brought that. So how did you tackle that?
That to me is the difference with this, is I'm an actor first. And then the character sings. That's just the element of the character. And then the magnitude of who she is, which means she's familiar to all of us. My task is to pull out those nuances and those characteristics of that huge persona we know, and where people can understand and it translates. Now, Miss Franklin was after studying, it's like she's a very kind of introverted personality. You know, she didn't use a lot of words. She had very subtle expressions. And so for me, from the acting standpoint, I'm like, wow, how do I tell this story with minimal words, with mostly just through facial expressions, to be able to tell the story where the viewer can understand the reasons of why she felt this way in this scene, to be able to deliver and emote that emotion. And then one of the things that I work with Tom Jones, the dialect coach, on her voice and the way she spoke, you know, which was very poised and very specific to her. She had her own style of speaking, you know, and her own way of being expressive as well, which is extremely different from myself. You know, I remember when we first went in to shoot, and I'm like, wait a minute, I can't use my expressions for this because it's Aretha, not Jennifer. I can't use Jennifer's singing approach. It's Aretha. I have to come in through her way. I can't emote emotion the way women of today do versus women of her time, because they grew up in completely different circumstances. So it took us to figure out, how did they exist in space? You know, women wasn't allowed to take up space during that time.
We were still going through civil rights even when she was, you know, so she had a different way of being in the world. I 100% agree.
It took a special type of understanding to know how to exist if we're going back into that era, you know, which was a huge process in itself to understand the proper way to be as a woman at a time like that. She walks into muscle shows and she starts off in the background and the men are in the lead. And then eventually you see her grow and she takes the forefront and she's leading, you know? So it's like, how did she make her presence known to become the queen of soul in circumstances and those conditions, you know? So that took a while to understand that era. And I recall calling Patti LaBelle to get an understanding of like, well, Miss Franklin is no longer here. And then I was like, who can help me understand what it was like to be a woman during that time? What was it like to be a Black woman during that time? What was it like to be a celebrity, an artist, a mother, all of those things. So it could help me embody, you know, the space she was in.
And also a woman of the church, you know, she was very,
well.
you know, and that's another element too, that I thought you seamlessly sort of brought in and you carried. Are you very religious as well?
Yes, I was born and raised in the church. I wasn't a preacher's kid, but Close enough. We spent every day in church. So even that, making the church scenes as authentic as possible. And that was key and important, musically, everything, because that's what she gave. This is who this story is about. A musical icon who was birthed from the church. So it was important to me to maintain her faith throughout her character and the gospel throughout her music.
And speaking of music, and you, I mean, one would assume, and I don't know if this is right or not, but I think I read this somewhere, one would assume that you really know your way around the piano, but is that not, did you have to specifically learn piano?
Yes, that was the thing. I started
to play, so.
She could play. She was gifted, born in the church,
Yes.
Anointed with it from birth. I mean, in my family, everybody could peck a little bit, or some can really play. I said I could not play Miss Franklin without learning that element. So that is the very first thing I started with, was the piano, which I still do now, you know, as well. But it was too huge of an element of her. And I think that's the power of the biopic as well, is because a lot of people, we know her as the world's greatest vocalist, you know, but
Right.
Most don't seem to know, like, no. She was the conductor and the creator of the music as well. So it was important to have that element in there of her life story.
How long did that take? Like, just tell me, was it a year you worked on playing piano?
Oh, I started at this point, that was about, I at least started maybe almost a year before we started filming.
Right.
I would get up early in the morning and get on the piano for hours every morning, you know, and learn all of her songs, because that's the other element of the music aspect of it. It's like I always say, y'all, I'm a singer. Miss Franklin was the conductor and the writer and all of that, and the musician. And those who are watching this from a musical standpoint will understand, like, those are different type of ears that's processing the music. So in order for me to be able to deliver it to the same extent as she did, I would need to know this music inside out, because musicians who play the music, that's a whole nother perspective. You know what I mean? They're cultivated within the music versus someone just singing a top line. So I need to know how to play every single song she played. Know the keys, the progressions, the modulations, the C7s, whatever the key the song is in, and how it's played. So that was a huge part of the process.
And see, that's the part that I think so many people who might watch like your seamless performance and they think, oh, well, sure, it's Jennifer Hudson, she can sing. But this is the stuff that I think most people don't really understand. You know, just because you can sing doesn't mean you can play the piano, but you knew you had to do it in order to really embody who she was. And that's the work, you know, that's the work that actors put into bringing characters to life that nobody really ever thinks about, really. They just think, well, sure, she can sing. Of course she can play. So I loved when I heard that, and I'm happy that it's true. I love when I heard that you really had to do that kind of work, because that speaks to your commitment for bringing the truth. I really respect that.
Thank you.
When I first heard that you were playing Aretha, I thought, what is out there that we don't know about Aretha? Because we know so much about her. Documentaries have been made about her. I saw Amazing Grace, which I love. So I thought, what are we going to learn about her in this movie? As not only the star of the movie, but I know you were very involved in the creation of the whole piece. So how did you feel about tackling those very sensitive issues of her trauma and the abuse? And how did you guys settle on how you would present it in the story? You know, because I think that's a big part of what we, the audience, don't really know and understand, but you guys kind of went there a little bit. So how did you decide that, and how did you feel about portraying that part of who she was?
I can only speak for me. I know I feel as though in telling someone's vulnerabilities to that capacity, I needed to bear myself the same way and come from the most honest an authentic place, because a lot of times when you're acting, that comes from a place, you even though the traumas may not be the same, we all have them, and we all have a life and things that we go through, so I felt it will only be right to bear myself in the performance as vulnerable as I possibly could, knowing the vulnerabilities in which we were tapping into. Right. And at the same time, it's a biopic. It's a story. It's your story. Because at times when you don't tell it and overlook it, when we all know what it is, then it's like, well, why didn't they tell that part? You know what I mean? Exactly. So the best way for me through it all was to approach it as carefully and from the most honest and vulnerable place possible.
Did you ever have an opportunity to talk to her about any of this before she passed away?
Not this in particular, no.
Because I thought that was a really important part of like the there of the story. Like what did we learn that was new? Did you also find that you connected to her through her activism? You know,
Oh
like
my God, yes.
how? Explain
You
that.
know, I didn't realize. I don't know, maybe coming from a different era, like I didn't realize how much she was a part of it.
Yeah.
You know, to that magnitude, like, wow, you use your platform to make that difference. And I recall while being in the middle of these things, like some of this stuff feels relatable to what's happening at the time where we were then, you know, and it made me feel like, wow, well, what are we all doing with our platforms, you know, because did she have to do that? Not necessarily, but she did, you know, to make a difference, or even how closely she worked with Dr. King, you know what I mean, in the movement and using her voice and her platform to do that, you know, or with Angela Davis and funding her. And I don't necessarily think she went out and said, hey, I did this, or I funded her, but that you don't always have to scream it, but to see that she was there and in support, you know, that I didn't necessarily know that. No.
And I think when people don't scream it, I think it speaks more to their real motivations behind doing it. You know, to me, that says someone is really there for the cause, not to get the pats on the back, you know, or not use it in any way to manipulate. Do you think that, like, because you're a mother too, because you just said before we started, your little son went through the back, you're not so little son, it's almost the same age as my daughter, but do you think that being a mother informed you being able to play her?
I definitely think so. You can't help but to relate to that, being a mom, but even the loss of her mom, you know, that as well. So yes, on both sides, being a daughter who lost a mother and then being a mother with children, you know? So yeah.
And did that, and I know you lost your mom, and I wasn't so sure I was going to bring this up, but do you feel like that's something too that sort of kindred your spirits, that was into this character? Because you two both suffered a very unique loss, and not everybody can say they suffer in this quite the same way.
I think she saw more in me beyond the singing and acting, to know that I would have the depth to be able to relate.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think she got to know that.
I feel a little bit delayed because those things didn't register to me until I was literally in the middle of those scenes.
Really?
The scene where her mother comes to her at the piano.
Yes.
And I remember Audrey saying at the end of the scene, like, this is a very heavy life to tell. And I was feeling it in that moment. And I was like, oh my God, yes, it is, you know? And in that moment is when it hit me. I'm like, this is beyond Jennifer sings and acts. Like she knew that was there, that it never registered to me, or that we paralleled, or we could understand, or in each other in that way. And that's what I mean by, in telling going into those vulnerable places, or in her story, I had to come from my very own, you know, because you want to handle that with the same respect, with the same care, when you know what the cost was, when you know what that's like. And as you said, it's not many who can relate. So it couldn't help but to come from a genuine, authentic place, because it was just as real to me.
And it probably afforded you some cathartic experiences, I would imagine. I know it does for me. So I would imagine it probably did for you too. Listen, did you ever feel, and I ask you this because I played Dorothy Dandridge, did you ever feel that she came to you? Because I did, and everybody thought I was crazy, but I thought, no, Dorothy is with me, and I could literally feel her energy. And I wondered, was that the same for you?
Yes, I felt that then, and I still feel that way. You know, it's I can't explain how it comes to me, but I know it when I feel like her presence, or even definitely in a lot of the church things, she was very present, you know, and in vulnerable moments at times as well. But I still feel that way. I really do.
You think she'll stay with you?
You know what? I feel that way. I really do. Like the ways she appears, or I feel her presence. Yes.
Because I had that too. I had Dorothy Dandridge. She would come to me, but then after the Academy Awards were over, and I feel like I sort of closed a loop for her, she left me. It's like she said, "Okay, this is done." So I was wondering if you think it'll ever be done, or did you have a feeling of, now that you put her movie in the world, maybe she's waiting for you to win your Academy Award and then she'll be done.
In Jesus' name, we pray, amen. You know what, Halle, that's one of the very first things she said to me when we first met. She said, "You're gonna win an Oscar for playing me," right? And I was like, "Ma'am, what, you're shy or something?" I was like, "Well, I am sitting at the table with the Queen of Soul." Like, it was just overwhelming. And I was like, "Oh my God, I hope, I would love to, but I always think like, okay, this is a huge assignment, from her, right? And it's personal to me. Like, this is the most personal project to me for so many reasons. And so I still sit and say, did I cross every T? Did I dot every I? What more can I do? What did I complete the assignment? But I'm willing to work, whatever that is, and to just upkeep her legacy, which we all will do, I'm sure. But whatever my part is in it, I just want to continue to do that.
Well, you did do one more thing, because you wrote a song. You teamed up with Jamie Hartman and the legendary Carole King, who wrote the legendary Natural Woman for Aretha, right? So you did do another thing. You actually then wrote a song. Congratulations on your Grammy nomination, first of all. But you guys then wrote a song together.
Yes, Miss Carole King.
You just dripping in legends. You just dripping in legends.
You see, that's why I'm like, it's overwhelming. Like, let me get used to this one moment before that moment is just overflows. I'm so grateful for it. But Jamie Hartman, I knew I wanted him to be a part of it, and will.i.am as well, because he's always been a strong supporter. And I knew I wanted them to produce and help write the original song to the film. But it was Jamie Hartman who said, "What about Carole King?" And I said, "That's it." Done. It was nothing else to be said about it. Like, of course, that is genius, Carole King, and she was gracious enough to come in and help write the title track. It's a dream to me to have her come in and write it, and then to be able to say she wrote me a song too, in dedication to Miss Franklin. And what better way to like seal it with that, as a gift to Miss Franklin's legacy.
And the last thing I want to talk to you about, because I find it's really interesting, is this whole female element you had behind this movie. Talk to me about whose decision that was. Why was that important? I know as women, especially Black women, the white space is now us telling our own stories from our own point of view. So when I read in the notes that it's all so many females behind the scenes, written, directed, of course, starring, did it feel different to you? I mean, you've done many movies now, so did it feel different? In what ways did it feel better to you, if it felt better to you, to be all women surrounding you in so many ways?
I guess it felt more familiar. When you're surrounded by your own, in a way, it felt right.
Right.
Appropriate. I guess I'm saying appropriate. And the goal, Miss Franklin was a powerful woman, a powerful Black woman. So why shouldn't a story be led by powerful Black women, Right. And I think that was a goal. Overall for that purpose, right. But it felt right. It felt appropriate, I would say.
Well, Jennifer, I in closing, I'm just going to tell you that I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
And I really, truly hope that you get nominated for an Academy Award, because you deserve it. And I truly hope that at the end of that night, you are going to be standing next to me.
Oh,
I really hope that with all of my heart.
Thank you so much.
But mainly
I want to be like you.
But mainly because you deserve it. You deserve it. In 20 years, someone else deserves to stand there, and it's you, and you deserve that. You really deserve that, and I hope that happens. But remember what I told you that night.
I would never forget it.
Remember what
I would never forget it. I will never forget it.
Don't ever, because if it doesn't happen, we can't control all of this. If it doesn't happen, no, you did
Thank
it.
you.
Know your worth. Know Aretha is up there smiling, and know you couldn't have done it better. No one could have done it the way you did it. There was you left nothing on the floor. Okay, just know that. No matter how that shakes out,
Thank
just
you.
know that. Just
Means
know that.
everything coming from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I adore you. I wish you
I
so well on your journey.
appreciate you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye, honey.